Go live to our diplomatic correspondent, Ellie Hochenberg. Ellie is speaking with Israeli government leaders at an important counterterrorism and security conference near Tel Aviv. Ellie, right now, what are lawmakers, policymakers in Israel saying about the security situation, saying about the situation with Iran? What's their opinion?
Well, Jeff, in only a few hours from now, the Security Cabinet will convene at the military headquarters in Tel Aviv to discuss the latest unfolding developments and perhaps most importantly, what's to expect next. But meanwhile, it appears that there's really not much difference whatsoever between opposition and coalition when it comes to Iran and the Israeli activity in Syria. Let's take a quick listen to what Tzipi Livni and Avi Gabay, both from the opposition party of the Zionist Union, told us earlier in the day.
On that issue, it's opposition and coalition. We are together. We both understand that Iranians cannot be in Syria. They cannot establish any formal military actions in Syria.
I hope that the Iranians would understand that their aspirations in Syria are not legitimate, that it costs them. Not only with money but damages, and they should focus on their own interest in Iran and not outside Iran.
Ellie, that's a snippet of some of the Israeli reaction. Right now, what about the rest of the world? What's the reaction we're hearing right now from Europe, from Africa? What do they have to say?
Well, we had the privilege to sit down earlier in this day, Jeff, with the Tanzanian foreign minister who's currently visiting Israel, the first ever foreign minister to do so. And even though Africa seems to be a bit outside of the loop when it comes to what's going on between Israel, Iran, and Iran in Syria, he definitely believes that Israel has the full right and obligation, actually, to defend itself. Let's take another listen to what he told us today.
Unfortunately, it is in one of the hottest and difficult security environment in the Middle East. And the challenges to its security and that of its citizens are multiple and indeed very threatening indeed. Certainly, like every other country, it has the right to defend itself, it has the right to exist, it has the obligation to defend its citizens.
Ellie, you mentioned before there, at this point, is little daylight between the opposition and between the coalition. They're on the same page, but you did speak with the Yesh Atid leader, Yair Lapid, a frequent critic of Netanyahu's government. What is Yair Lapid saying today?
Yeah, so when it comes to Israel's security and its actions in Syria, quite a united front. But when we're talking about the post-nuclear deal era, here we are seeing some divisions. Yair Lapid believes that Israel needs to focus now on Europe, rather on the United States. And now let's move to another quick listen to what Yair Lapid had to say.
Europe has lost it. They lost sight of who are the bad guys and who are the good guys in this entire scenario. And they forgot that appeasement never works with terrorists, and Iran is a terrorist country. So what we need to do now is a joint effort to make sure they understand what is really going on, and Europe goes on board with canceling this bad agreement with Iran.
All right, Ellie, thank you so much for that report. Back in studio, I want to bring into this conversation our Middle East correspondent, Emily Rose. Emily, over the last few minutes, we're starting to see some reaction from Syrian officials, Syrian lawmakers, their first reaction to the battle that played out a few hours ago overnight. What's the reaction you're tracking today?
Yeah, one of the tweets that we saw, initial tweets right after that strike, was from Faraz Shahab. He's a Syrian lawmaker, and he actually claimed that Syria was responsible for those initial strikes, not Iran. That myth was very early on busted, and we knew that it was Iran who essentially took that strike, took that move, and also felt the retaliation for it.
All right, stand by, Emily. Again, tracking the reaction on Syria right now. Let's go back to Ellie Hochenberg. Ellie, with a special guest. Ellie, give us a sense of who you're talking to now.
Well, Jeff, I'm now joined by Amir Khan of the ruling Likud party. Obviously, a big week for the Prime Minister and the Likud party as a whole. Mr. Khan, thank you very much for being with us. So, can we declare this week as a huge success for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his policies?
First, this week has not ended yet. And we are fighting, as you know, for our defense since ever, actually. But this has been a difficult week. I think that the move that President Trump has done is a Churchillian move in how brave it is and how courageous. And I think it is the beginning of the victory of the free world over the evil of Iranian regime. This is the beginning, but it's not the end. It's still a struggle. We see it on our northern border, and I don't think that Iran is over with a nuclear plan yet, but we will push them to do that.
Well, some of your party members have already threatened the Assad regime that if it will continue to facilitate Iranian presence there, it will be a problematic situation, to say the least, again, from the perspective of the Syrian regime. Do you echo these messages? I
would say this. If Iran continues what it's doing right now, 1,500 kilometers from their borders and 50 kilometers from our borders, there is a great risk that Syria will become an Iranian graveyard. And if they do not wish for it to be that way, they should go back to Iran.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Ohana. And there you go, Jeff. Opposition coalition seems to be united at this point in time. But as always in Israeli politics, this is all likely to change soon. We will, of course, continue to update you with all the following.
All right. Ellie Hochenberg reporting live, grabbing lawmakers as she sees them.